This episode is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is the #1 tool for all podcasters. You can record high-fidelity audio between remote locations and get studio-quality sound. Go to Zencastr.com and use coupon code THATENTERTAINS for 20% off for 3 months or 20% off an annual plan.
This is a That's Entertainment podcast.
Awesome.
Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome.
That was awesome. You guys are awesome.
No,
You're awesome.
no.
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. I'm very excited for this week's show. It's a couple days late, but that's because I was working on some other things related to both this podcast and the network so that I had everything in order. And that is mainly our brand new show, the After Party of One podcast. That's right. That was about 2 weeks late because I was in a weird headspace, but After Party of One podcast is now available on thatentertains.com/network. Please go check it out. It should be by the end of the week up on all your normal podcatchers like Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and even on Spotify. Speaking of Spotify, Everything is Awesome is now available on Spotify. That's right. You can go to Spotify and subscribe to Everything is Awesome right from there and enjoy some amazing conversations in a whole new way if you're a Spotify fan. Spread the word too. Let people know. We're trying to get on as many podcatchers as we can because we realize that Apple Podcast has gone through some changes and not everyone likes those changes. Anyway, before we get to this week's guest, I do want to remind people to check out a couple important places. Some housekeeping. Let's get that out of the way. Go to patreon.com/thatentertains, and from there you can subscribe to the entire That's Entertainment Podcast Network, and that gets you some exclusive, some early access, and other content from all the podcasts on the That's Entertainment Podcast Network, like Everything is Awesome, After Party of One Pod, Bullies Keep Out, and The Ladies Who Rant, shows that are syndicated like Victims and Villains, and Superhero Movie Cast. Well, Superhero Movie Cast does not do anything with the Patreon. They are a syndicated show purely, and Victims and Villains are, once we get them uploaded, providing an extra podcast a month for us to post on the website on patreon.com/thatentertains. So go check that out for all the wonderful subscription levels that you can subscribe at to get awesome rewards for being a That's Entertainment Podcast Network subscriber. Make sure you follow Everything is Awesome on Twitter and Facebook at RealAwesomePod, and follow me on Twitter at ThatNerdyKev, which is where I'm the most active and the easiest way to get a hold of me. And oh boy, this week's show, episode 144, Jeff Stormer returns to the show proper to chat about his first crack at professional game design. Mission accomplished. That's right, agents. For those of you that remember, we played Mission Accomplished on Everything is Awesome episode 100 back in December of 2017. A link to that show is in the notes, as well as to Jeff's Kickstarter for Mission Accomplished. As I record this intro right now, the game has funded and is closing in on its first stretch goal, an extra dossier from James Wallace, designer of the Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen, and the lead designer on the 2017 Paranoia reboot. We chat about all that and much, much more right here on awesomepodcast.com and thatentertains.com/network. Let's throw it to Jeff and Kev of the past. Right here, right now, in your ear holes. I don't know the last time you were on Everything's Awesome proper. But
as far as a proper episode, I think it was way back the first time that we did it. I think every other time I've done Everything is Awesome I've been a live show.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was actually thinking about this, and I didn't mean to like jump into the show this soon. I was.
No, that's fine. I figured we'd chat for a bit and then do the show intro stuff proper, especially because I was like pounding on my table just now.
Oh no! I don't do a show intro at all anymore. Like eventually, this just turns into the show. So I always hit record, and then eventually it cuts into the show. It's gotcha. Kind of it's almost like every other interview show now.
Gotcha.
And it was something that I tweaked. I don't know if that was a year. I think that was a year 2 tweak. I think I did that this past January. Every like end of January when I'm about to hit my anniversary at February 1st, I do like a tweak to the show just to keep it interesting for me and hopefully the audience.
That makes sense. I do something similar with Party of One, but it's not so much a tweak as it is kind of like a refocusing. Like every year, like when we hit, actually we're coming up on it in 3 weeks. Now that I think about it, I got to get that anniversary thing recorded. I got to get on that. But I try to do like a different thing. Yeah. So like year 1 was just like figuring out what the show was. And then when I hit that first year, I was like, all right, now that we know what the show is, now that I know what we do well and what we don't do well, I'm going to refine that process as much as I can. Then year 3 was, all right, now I know how to, like, now I know that we can play these games. Now I want to see, like, how far out there within the concept of these games we can get. And now we're heading into this will be year 4. So we're going to have to figure out what the new focus is in year 4.
So now, because I always confuse myself even when I talk anniversary dates. Is this your 4th anniversary or your 3rd anniversary going into year 4?
3rd anniversary going into year 4. We started October 26th, 2015. So this will be 3 years, and then we're heading into that 4th year.
Yeah. Which is it's nuts because I want to say that date sounds so familiar to me, and not because of your show. I want to say that was about the time I started recording Everything Is Awesome, but I banked a whole lot of shows and didn't start releasing until February 1st, 2016.
Oh yeah, I banked no shows when I launched Party of One. I think I had 2, maybe I think I may have banked 2. I think I had 1 in the bank, which is why the episode releases go like October 26th, immediately a week after that, 3 weeks until episode 3, and then January.
Well, I had the benefit of, like, at that point, I think it was like 8 years of podcasting.
Sure.
So like I knew what I was good at and what I was bad at. And I mean, fast forward to almost 3 years later now, and I'm still figuring out that I'm actually really bad at a lot of things and only good at a few. But yeah, you've actually been on almost every type of show that I've done with Everything Is Awesome. You're missing one that I'll have to get you in on. So we do
we'll make that happen.
Yeah, we do this show here where it's pre-recorded and we sit down and just do a 1 hour conversation. This is technically the 3rd time you've done that, but we've only aired it once before this because we lost, God, I think you might have been the audio that we lost like an hour and a half, 2 hours of.
That's right. I forgot that we did a whole thing. Yes. I forgot that we did a whole episode that just vanished into the ether.
Yes. There's maybe it's episode 10. One of my episodes that I did air. There was 4.
I do remember that now. I do remember that.
It was you, Jason Ashley from Too Cool for Tabletop, and then Joe Kaliva, I believe, were the 3. You were the 3 that at least came back and recorded the second time. I think there was 4 interviews that I lost, but you 3 came back and did it again, and that was like the moment that I, like, for the first time like forever, I was like, I can't believe I fucked up this much. Like, I'm gonna tuck my tail between my legs and say, guys, please come back on my show.
Oh. I totally forgot that we had recorded an entire interview that just vanished.
Yeah. I think about 20 minutes of it exist on maybe episode 10. I think
so. I remember you posting some of it somewhere.
And then we redid it. I want to say I think your episodes are 16. Maybe
I was gonna say 18, 19, maybe.
Maybe,
but
yeah.
16 might be.
It's before episode 20. Episode 20 was Erin McGathy. I know that, and you were before her, so you were in that first like 6 months of shows.
Yep.
And ended up being in like the back half of that 6 months because of having to re-record. But so you've done that. You did a normal live show of mine, which was at Bridge Set Sounds.
Yep, we did the Bridge Set Sound show.
Which was that was a fun show, despite the audience just consisting of your wife.
Here's the thing. That was a really, like, I really genuinely enjoyed that show. I had like a follow up, but I will always remember specifically finishing playing noisy person cards.
Yes.
Getting up, walking to the back, standing there for 5 minutes, and going, I'm just gonna go sit. Jen's out, like my wife is out there. I'm just gonna go sit, and then listening to Nick play Earth, specifically Earth.
Yeah.
We're all in this together, and just it was the most beautiful. Like it was the first time I had heard that song, and I can't tell you how many times I've listened to that song since then.
And that one, that show was like weird for me because it was, let's see, I think that was 11 days after I lost my uncle to cancer, and that's why there was no one there. I did zero promotion for the show because I was busy like grieving my uncle and whatnot, which is, you know, I think Steve said that there was a bunch of people watching online, so we had the online audience on the Bridgeset.
I know Bridgeset always gets like a very good turn again, and I've done a live show with them since then, and yeah, we had the same experience where nobody showed up for the actual recording. Like for the Party of One recording we did, no one showed up, but they were like, yeah, we had like 150 people watching online, and I'm like, that's more than I would have expected.
And then the most recent was episode 100, where we did the Mission Accomplished actual play. And not that I don't think that's probably the only actual play we've done for Everything Is Awesome, but it's something that like I have in my back pocket that I want to start doing on as hey, this is the type of show that we can do live. The only one that you've missed is when we do panels at like Comic-Con and stuff.
We can make that happen.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I have at least, I know 2 cons that I'll be accepted at next year. I mean, I just assume because they accepted me last year, so we can make that happen next year for sure.
You know, I legitimately love doing panels. It's a thing that I set out to start doing in 2018, and I've gotten lucky enough to do a few of them. And I love it to death. It's one of my favorite things to do.
It's nuts how like despite so Party of One was your first foray into podcasting, correct?
Yes, that was my first podcast, attempt at it.
So it's nuts how like me doing Everything Is Awesome is almost like kind of reset to my whole podcasting career, because I really as much as I do tout the fact that I've been in it for so long, I kind of basically call myself the class of the 2016 podcast festival, which is like me, you, Full Belly Laughs, Quest for Magic and Steel.
Full Belly Laughs really start in 2016?
They may have started in late 2015.
That's wild. That's why Brian Durkin that man is a professional, because I thought that show had been around for like 8 years.
No, he started before. I think he started before me.
I think he started. I think he's. Yeah. Either way. Like the professionalism that he has is remarkable. I had assumed he'd been doing it for years.
Yeah. No, his first festival though was the 2016 festival, and same with the Quest for Magic and Steel, and you and me, and there's a couple of Doom Thugs.
Company.
Yeah,
good company to be in.
I maybe it's just because like I'm obviously like very close with a lot of those podcasts from that time frame, but I feel like those podcasts are the only ones that really kind of stick it in since that year, that have been with the festival every year since then. There's a couple. There's other ones like Overdue is like a super popular Philly based podcast that does it still, and obviously they've expanded so much more since 2016. It's I don't know how you feel about the festival. For me, I love it, but it's also one of the most frustrating experiences to deal with ever since they brought in like the big name talent, We Got This and the Harry Potter one and Flophouse and like all those, or Sawbones. Yeah, ever since they started bringing in like the paid acts, it's kind of been a little bittersweet for me, at least, because it's like, well, it's great that we're this popular now that we're able to do this as like a festival, and when I say we, I mean the Royal We of Philadelphia.
Sure, yeah.
But it kind of sucks because like the way it is like we're competing with one another, and not so much like local, like me and you, like we're not competing. Like people are.
I'm in specific competition with you. Like I set out every year, I'm like, I'm gonna crush him. This is gonna be the year that he's just ash under my boot.
Well, aside from that, typically for the local guys, it's not real competition, right? Because like if you're going to Amalgam, like they're going there to see that style of show.
Yeah, right. I will say I've always deeply admired the way that the festival sets that up. Like lumping those shows together has always just been like, I've always looked at those schedules and been like, I could sit here for a day. Like I could sit here for a day of this, and then I've always been very impressed with how they like line up those shows just right.
I think they need to find, and this is just me personally, and this is maybe because I think maybe the shows in Amalgam don't have to do it because the Amalgam weekend is usually really like it's just either 1 day or 2 days instead of all 4 days. But at Tattooed Moms, there's the overall feeling with me and a couple of the other shows is like, we really like that, like from 2:00 on, you have to compete with like the real funny people of Sawbones and We Got This. And because they're going on sometimes the same time as the 2 p.m. or the 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. shows at Tattooed Moms. And like, I assume people are going to pick the named people over the, who's Kevin Gallagher and what's awesome. I'm not going to go see that show. I'll go see Mark and Hal from We Got This. So I think they just need to work that out. In my opinion, I think
I definitely noticed that last year because when we went to see, I went to your live show, not this festival, last year's festival when Noah was promoting Game the Gamer.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, like, this is directly against Sawbo. Like, you're up against the McElroy.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so, and there's, you're not going to get the same crowd that you might have gotten from that, you know, had that show not been on. And you did see the difference, like in the last 2 years, because there's more offerings. There are less people coming to Tattooed Moms for podcasting during the festival, but like barely noticeable.
Sure.
I just noticed it because I'm an insane person.
It happens. You know what I would love to see from the festival next year? The one thing I'd really love to see from the festival, and I think we could do it. I think it could happen. I don't know what the venue is. I kind of gave a venue a shot this year and it didn't really work out. Not naming any names or anything because I don't want to cause drama, but I want to find a good venue because I want a venue that will give us 1 day of just all tabletop podcasts.
Oh, okay.
And there's enough of them in Philly that you could set it up. And I would argue that it would need a little bit of a different like timing structure than the way they set up Amalgam or Tattooed Moms, where it's that tight 40 minutes.
Yeah.
If you gave the shows like an hour and a half, took a day, so like we'll say, let's see, 3, 6. You could take a 9-hour block, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 6 shows, and I could name at least let's see, off the top of my head, there's Party of One, Heart Points, Pot of Love, Magic and Steel. That's 4 hours. That's a 6-hour block. That's basically like a show block of a day. You give us like a venue that'll give us an hour and a half each. And I think that's a spectacular day of podcasts.
Yes. And without giving too much away for my January festival, I'm looking to expand it big time this year. And I am looking at, it depends on the turnout as far as like the podcasts and comedians and films that apply, because I'm marketing it more as a comedy festival, but with a heavy influence of podcasts. And that's I'm doing that kind of thing. This could be, I mean, a total failure at the end of the day, and I'll find out in January. But I'm doing something similar to that, where I'm trying to book venues based off of like the type of show, because that's something I learned with Amalgam. Is the first show I did live at Amalgam, I thought I was marketing it kind of right with, all right, well, I still, my show is a talk show, so we'll do, all right, it's the Wizard World, unofficial Wizard World after party. Boom. Sure. Okay. So that was in 2017, I believe, March of 20, no, not March, I guess June of 2017. And then I was like, all right, and I'll book I got Ophidian. I was like, I'll book him because
nothing but love for Ophidian the Coat. My favorite wrestler in the world, who I am lucky enough to be friends with. Like, nothing but love for Ophidian.
Yes, I don't know how I got that. Like I think I just cold called him basically through Twitter. I was like, hey man, can I DM you about being on the show? And then, or maybe I had his email. Maybe I found his email somewhere. But yeah, I mean, he was super sweet, and he got there and was super willing to do whatever. And I was like, all right, a wrestler is almost comics plus it's Shakara, so boom, it will kind of all work out. And doing a talk show at Amalgam is not the way you can do things there. Because I found that out. The flip of that was having you and A Quest for Magic and Steel do a show at Tattooed Moms back in January of 2017, and realizing that doesn't really work for that venue.
Yeah, so no, it's not. I've always wanted to run I've always wanted. That has always been on my list of things, but I also know that it's not the right venue for it.
Maybe if you did something like you were talking about, where you just do a day or a night of role playing, and it's very heavily role playing themed, so that that crowd is coming to just watch role playing or to participate in role playing or whatever, you might be able to make that work. But to do something, I think, where you're okay, we're going to have a mix of all these different podcasts. I don't think you can blend those two genres of basically actual play role-playing game podcasts and almost everything else. I don't know what genre you call Tattooed Mom, except for it's just a bunch of it's typically just a bunch of guys sitting around talking and doing quote unquote comedy. And sometimes you get some other things in there too, but I don't think there's a real specific genre at Tattooed Mom.
I think Tattooed Moms generally gets the general interest shows. It generally gets because it's general interest shows go to Tattooed Moms. More of the geeky niche shows all go to Amalgam, and then the other venues that they get kind of get the harder to classify stuff, which is why All My Fantasy Children was at KTG. Was at KTG, because it's kind of tabletop, but it's also a lot weirder than that. But then also we were going to be. We had to cancel at the last minute. We were going to be at Amalgam this year, so it was. That's kind of how it's always. I've seen it shake out.
I think that show could work at Amalgam.
I think it would have if we had done it at Amalgam. I think it would have gone over well. My only concern is that there's almost always is that Amalgam is a family a family friendly venue, and Aaron and I, when we get rolling, things start popping off. We start having to. It would be tough to censor ourselves to the extent that an episode of All My Fantasy Children would require.
Every time I've done a show at Amalgam, it just so happened that I had my buddy Garrett there as a co-host or as a panelist for the episode 100 for Mission Accomplished. And every time, he's the one that I specifically, I tell everybody, I'm hey, by the way, family friendly, no cursing. But separately, I send him a text. I'm hey, just to let you know, no cursing at this venue. And both times definitely has dropped the F-bomb numerous times. And I'm oh my God, how does Ariel allow me to come here? To the point where even at every time I've talked to her after those shows, she's still very friendly, very welcoming about having me do stuff there. She was on my panel at Wizard World. She's super just super cool with the podcasting community and the creative community in general.
Yeah, the amount of events that they run at Amalgam, it's one of the coolest spots in the city.
Yeah, it's a shame that that it's so far from South Street when it comes to the Philadelphia Podcast Festival. That is, to me, one of my complaints is, and this is me doing a lot of research for comedy festivals and stuff, because another guy that I know that lives in Bucks County along with me, he wants to do like something up here for comedy, and he's asked me to help him do it since I kind of have some experience in throwing together events. And so everything I've noticed about comedy festivals is they're all within walking, like every venue is within walking distance of one another, in almost every city that I've found one. So and that's always been like, even before I knew that, like that was like kind of not a complaint, but like a question mark that I had about those two venues. But the problem I think is that like South Street it's hard to find a venue like as nice and as large as Amalgam.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like it's tough because it is far from all of the other kind of stuff, but it is like it's such a cool venue that I'm kind of like
Yes.
I would not want to I would not want to not have it be a part of it, only because
Yes.
like the energy there, like especially when like it's on,
Mm-hmm.
the energy at Amalgam I think is unmatched by any of the other like venues that I've been at. Like when the crowd, like for episode, like for Everything Is Awesome 100, like the crowd was hot.
Yes.
They were a hot crowd.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I would say that save for so I've done 2 panels now. I did one at the Great Philadelphia Comic Con in Oaks, PA, and then I did Wizard World. And they were vastly different audiences. Like maybe like the Greater Oaks one was probably the size of what you would expect to see at like a typical Everything Is Awesome live show, 15 to 30 people maybe, which is like I'd say like good and average for Everything Is Awesome. Wizard World was probably about 75 people in the room, but both those rooms were very engaging and very hot, and I loved doing. The only thing that's matched that or come close to matching it was episode 100 with Everything Is Awesome, save for maybe like my first live show with Everything Is Awesome, because that was such like an important moment for me in the show, and it was just like a huge rush. But yeah, doing a mission accomplished at episode 100 at Amalgam was amazing, and I think a lot of that has to do with me recognizing how to book a show like that and getting people that are like I'm not a comedian. I'm not funny. I'm not a comedian. I am. I barely pass as a podcast host.
It's important that we be aware of our weaknesses. I commend you for that.
Yes. So
that was the biggest thing that I've ever said on microphone, and I feel I was like this is gonna be funny, and then I can't be mean, because I immediately was just like, I'm gonna like crawl back into a hole and apologize, and I'm just like I should just be able to just like razz ya. I can't do it. I am too much of a baby face. I am the baby facest of baby faces. I am the baby face of role playing games.
It's funny because I am when I need to play a character, I'm an exceptionally better heel than I am babyface. Whenever I had to play face in wrestling, even when we were just in the backyard, so we literally were just entertaining ourselves, and maybe like so the very first like big show we ever did in the backyard, we invited a whole bunch of, like, we built a wrestling ring, we had a whole bunch of friends and family come to it, and we put on a show for them. So we did have live crowds before we went pro, but typically we're performing for ourselves. But as a baby face, it's that is so hard to carry a persona and a match as, I think. And I think you have to have a talent. You have to like more talent than a heel, I think, to be able to pull off babyface. A heel is super easy. You just have to say mean things to people, and then people instantly hate you.
Mm-hmm. I wish I had the skill to not immediate. I think I could do it in a wrestling ring. I think I could be a heel, like, because I love playing heel in a wrestling context.
Yes.
It's just when I'm like talking to friends or tweeting and stuff, I can't just like. I know friends who like I could take a pot like I can't just be that friend that like takes like a pot shot at you, and you get it and you're like, that's Jeff. As soon as I start writing it, I'm like, oh, they're gonna hate me. I can't do it. I just can't do it. I can't be that friend.
Yeah, I'm in real life, I'm probably I think I would say I probably swing closer to you like that. but I definitely think most of my friends that have known me for years would say I'm a complete dick. So I think it depends on like who I'm with. Like, the guys that I've known since, God, I mean, we're old now. So like, since I've known for like 20 to 30 years at this point, like I can take those shots at them and we're all good and happy about it. But someone that I've maybe only known for a year, I'm a little easier on.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, that's how I like. I think. Yeah, I think there are friends that I can absolutely just take down a peg, but I think I have to be like my closest friends, and they have to take the first shot.
Yeah. So I do want to like focus a lot of attention on mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
Your role playing game that you designed. And I'm sure we've talked about it in brief detail at episode 100. But so you're by the time this episode airs, if the math is right, your Kickstarter went live either today or yesterday, depending on when this episode drops exactly. So first of all, like let's get into the game.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into the game. What is mission accomplished? Let's get that out of the way.
Mission accomplished. There's a salute in the title, and I haven't figured out how to put that into like text yet. Mission accomplished is the role-playing game of super spies and office meetings. It is a game for 4 to 8 players, which is ironic because I've been doing a podcast about 2-player games for 3 years now.
Yes.
But it is a game for 4 to 8 players. Players are a team of super spies who have just come back from saving the world. You've done it. You've killed the bad guys. Congratulations, mission accomplished. However, some things went wrong, some things went sideways, and now you have to sit down with your manager and have a team meeting where you figure out who gets the blame for what went right and who gets the blame for what went right and the credit for what went wrong. Basically, and you have to have basically an uncomfortable office meeting where you kind of hash out the details. People, and you use the really important spy skills like, anonymous written reports on your coworkers and throwing people under buses and bickering and yelling at each other. Because by the end of the night, somebody is going to get burned and somebody is going to get that sweet promotion. The one with the floor to ceiling windows and the company credit card that they say is for emergencies. But like, come on, let's be real. We all know what an emergency is.
What I love about Mission Accomplished, I did the salute, is that it is a game. Like a lot of role-playing games promote working together as a team and lifting each other up, helping one another. I mean, there's some that are absolutely pitting each players against each other, but those ones, at least in the actual play world, I should say, because that's where like I know my tabletop is from actual play podcasts. Most of that stuff that I listen to tends to be very team focused.
So that's a lot of role playing games. I would say most role playing games, because as a hobby growing out of Dungeons and Dragons, have that like team focused atmosphere that I think this game kind of undercuts. And we follow in the tradition of some stuff like Paranoia and Fiasco, which say like, you don't have to be friends.
Yeah. And I do love like the way that it forces the players to undercut one another, really. Like, and even if like because you can form alliances, like that's like they're very much so. And I'll have the link in the show notes, of course, for episode 100. But you can listen to how some of the players that were playing that game were trying to help one another out. Garrett and I somehow we ended up being brothers. We were basically like, I think I was trying to salvage the relationship, but he was trying to throw me under the bus. Like that's where I think I was trying to play good guy. Like I was just trying to play babyface. I'm on everyone's team. But it really is like, if you really want to win, you have to throw people under the bus.
And what I really love about it is it from the first moment of the game, like the initial disclaimer, like it is all the entire like structure of the game is building a space in which I am feeling comfortable throwing you under a bus because I know that even if you don't throw me under a bus later, somebody else in this room is gonna throw me dead center in front of a bus by the end of the game.
Yes,
and so it creates that. There's this atmosphere of there's this atmosphere of like shared collaborative competition that I think is probably one of my favorite things about the game.
And it's a great exercise for someone like me who is not like, I'm not a great role player. I don't think or I should say I'm not a great improviser. And this is actually a really great improv game. Like basically that's, and I guess you could say all role playing is a big improv game, but this specifically is, collectively coming up with a prompt and then having I guess we did almost a 60-minute to 90-minute scene of that prompt. And I think that's like a great exercise for role players, improvisers. And I don't know if you could ever have a quote unquote serious game of this.
Because it's very it's very specifically built for comedy. It is a comedy role-playing game. Like from the ground up, it is designed to be funny. You could theoretically play it serious, maybe, but like the mechanics of it are all geared towards this is funny. This is a funny thing. Like it is specifically built within the mindset of these are things that make people laugh as a reaction.
Yes.
And so I've put a lot of thought into like funny games and how to make game mechanics funny, because what's funnier than deep scientific analysis?
Nothing.
Exactly. It's great comedy.
So now, what made you? Because it is actually, and it didn't really click, despite me being a weekly listener of your show. It didn't click to me that like, hey, how come Jeff didn't do a 2-player game? Like, what made you design something that's kind of, I don't want to say out of your wheelhouse, because I know you play games that are more than just one, a party of one, or a party of two, but you creatively, at least on a weekly basis, show the world what you can do with 2 players.
It's my bread and butter, and it's my bread and butter, and it's real frustrating that it's not a game. Like I'm gonna put together a game and drop it on the feed for launch day, but I recognize the frustration of like, it would be a lot easier to highlight my game on my podcast if I could play it with 2 players, and I can't.
Yeah. But what made you like decide to design a game that wasn't 2 players, since that's kind of your wheelhouse?
It was an accident. The game was actually written to play with 2 players. Originally, I sat down and tried to write a game that while it had a GM, could have been run with 1 agent. Because I actually was writing this for a Party of One live show. My goal was to have this played at a Party of One live show. And then have like audience contributions like written on note cards, and that would be kind of the thing that would propel the game forward. It wasn't until the first playtest of it that I really sat down and like listened to people play it and kind of had a revelatory moment that made me kind of go, oh, I think this game's not actually play. I think this game because originally the design of it was the end game, which is currently like ranked. Like you all roll dice. There's a winner and a loser, which is not a role-playing game thing necessarily. But you roll it, everyone ends up in a position, and you kind of go from there. So like last place to first place.
Yes.
And I'm comfortable spoiling this because people will have heard it in a bunch of podcasts, including Party of One. Everything is Awesome 100. First place is a joke answer. Second place gets the promotion. First place gets a horrible, worse than death, like the secret worst outcome of them all.
Yes.
It is the punchline to the entire comedy skit, which going back to this whole game is about comedy, is that it is everything is building to that punchline. It is building to you think you think that the story has come to an end, and then I hit you over the head, like I hit you in the face with a pie, and the whole thing takes a left turn. Comedy.
Yes.
But so the idea was originally, and that was going to be a roll on a table. You were going to collect your dice, roll on a table, take the highest result, consult this D6 table, and then that was going to be how you figured out what happened. So the idea was that it was entirely possible that no one got that funny result.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it's kind of cool. I think it's kind of great if like you could play through the game and there's a result that's actually good that maybe no one gets. And then I sat there for a while and went, well, that's not funny. Like, what? Imagine an SNL skit where, like, they just don't include the final punchline.
Yes, yeah.
They just, like, are like, yep, there's our premise. All right, bye, everybody. Morrissey's up next. That's not good comedy.
Right.
So I was like, well, then you need this punchline has to be in every game. But for the punchline to be in every game means that like the ranking system, which was already kind of there when I was working off of it off a D6 table, meant that ranking system meant that there had to be a minimum of 3 agents. Okay, because you had to have an agent not win. You had to have an agent lose. So, get fired or burned or sent off to Siberia. That had to happen. That's the setup to the punchline. The expectation is then you have a person who gets second place. That person gets the promotion. Then first place gets the joke option. So I was like, the game doesn't, and that was the moment of realization of like, oh God, this game literally does not work without 3 people plus mission control.
Yeah.
That was the moment that it all clicked for me, and I was like, nope. Well, I made this game will never work with 2 players.
So now, when did you start designing this? Because I've known about it for obviously since at least episode 100, and I think we play tested it at PAX Unplugged last year.
We did play test it. You've played it twice now.
Yeah.
Because we play you've played it twice because we played it at PAX Unplugged. Then we played it. That's when you forgot your first taste of it. Then you asked me to play it on episode 100. So let's see. My first time posting up, I think it first dropped, I want to say about a year and a half. I want to say the first version of it. That dropped was a year and a half ago. Was in May of 2017 would have been, I think, the earliest version. June 1st, 2017 is when I first posted the original version of it. I just Twitter searched it.
Okay.
So I've been working on it about since then.
And, you started a little before that, obviously, and then you first made it public around June 1st.
I pretty much wrote it about 3 days before I made it public.
Oh, interesting. So, okay, so June 1st, you still kind of had... did you have the expectation that it was a 2-player game?
I did.
June 1st?
I really figured that it was going to be playable with 2 players as of June 1st, 2017.
Oh, wow. So there's kind of a quick turnaround time between that and then realizing, oh God, this is not my wheelhouse. I need to add more players. Once I realized,
I was like, because it was the first playtest of it where I was like, people played it through, they got to the ending, they rolled the dice, no one got the funny result, and I was like, well, that was kind of disappointing. I kind of hoped that somebody would get like the funny result, and then I was okay. Well, then that means somebody has to get the funny result, and that means, that means 3 people have to have. That means at least 3 people have to play the game.
So now, how many, I don't know if you kept a count of version iterations and whatnot. How many changes, how much did this thing evolve from, obviously, going from 2-player to what's the recommended player now? Is it a minimum of
minimum 3 players and mission control? I have played it with 8 agents, and it has gone fine.
Okay.
So it is a large group game.
Okay, so obviously a big change to go from 2-player to up to 8 plus mission control, so 9. But how else did this thing evolve?
Originally, there was one kind of dice. Originally, it was just a straight, you just collected commendations. Then I added like a bad kind of dice to make it a little more complicated. That was like the first major change. Originally, the cards that you wrote on were what happened was like I gave you a mission and told you what went wrong. Everybody writes down 3 things that happen. Doesn't matter if it relates to an agent, just a thing that happens on the mission. That very quickly changed to you are ratting out 2 people on your team. That was kind of that was when that's the form, and since then that's been kind of that was kind of when the form of the game kind of fell into place. Probably around version 2.0, 3.0.
Okay.
Like that was probably when like the core of the game worked. And since then it has been a world of little changes of like this wording is not as funny as it would be if it was structured this way. Probably the biggest changes have been to the way the game starts. That first part of the game has changed dramatically. Like 8 different ways.
Now, so explain that,
Sure.
if that doesn't spoil anything.
No, not at all. The game starts by explaining what the mission was that you accomplished. That's how the game starts. Like the game begins, the part that's normally played in a role-playing game is in the past, which I think is fun. That's part of the game's charm. Yes. It's entirely about what happens after the thing that we just played, that we theoretically played through. But it starts with mission control explaining to you what happened on that mission. Originally, mission control told you 3 things. What the mission objective was. What villains, which is the vast international league of larcenists, arsonists, and inventors of nefarious science, what villains was planning. What the objective was. What you have been dispatched to do. What you ended up doing instead. They gave you those 3 pieces of information and then said, add details. That didn't work. Like, I played it in playtests, and the feedback I ended up getting was like, I don't really feel invested in this mission, and by the time I'm supposed to start contributing to it. So we threw that out. Then I took a cue from Dungeon World, which is what we did on Everything is Awesome 100, where I was like, okay, we're all going to collaborate and build the entire mission together. I'm going to go person by person, talk our way through each piece of the mission, be like, what was our mission? What was our objective? What went wrong? You know, what was our escape like? Where was the mission set? It worked okay. It worked better, but it didn't work. It was asking the players to make too much.
Okay, yeah.
Like it was asking, it wasn't grounding the players in a premise before I asked them to start. It kind of went too far in the other direction.
And that I can imagine, you know, and I've been thinking a lot about this. I was reviewing James D'Amato's book that he put out. And so writing my review of that, I was thinking about this a lot. Like that can almost be intimidating to someone who's either new to role playing or not comfortable with maybe being a creative person or they're just very not like they feel out of their element, but playing a role playing game or something like that.
Yeah. And so like we ended up veering back away from that to where we are now. And this has been working super, super well. We finally figured out what fits. And that is a written mission dossier. About 3 pages, about 500 words is what we're telling our stretch goal people. That is a list of names, like non-player characters, important places, props that are fun, office protocols, which kind of help you get into the spirit of games. Like the example that I have is one of the missions is you go to the moon and blow up a space laser. So naturally, mission control insists that you make sure your passport is up to date because you're technically leaving the country. And then we give this to players. It's only about 500 words. Most of it's lists. So it's very easy for you to flip through on the fly. And I say, tell me something on here that went wrong. Tell me something on here that screwed up monumentally that we have to kind of like get to the bottom of in this meeting. Everybody goes around the table. They look through the list and they go, oh yeah, that guy died. That guy's dead. Like, we accidentally killed this person. Oh, you know what? We definitely didn't have our passports. Somebody forgot to file our passports. Somebody threw up on our spacesuits. And like, people pick things, I write them, or Mission Control writes them down. I really wrote this game for me to play, and so I trip up sometimes and still talk about it like it's only me that is being Mission Control ever.
Yeah.
But
have you played as a player?
I have not. I have not gotten to play as a player.
Wow, that's that. Now, in your promotion, because I know you're going on a big promotion run for your Kickstarter that you're doing for this, are you getting an opportunity to play it, or are you still just running?
I'm running it throughout the promotional tour. I'd like to play it at some point, especially because by the time I'm done with this tour, I don't think I'm going to want to run it for a while. But yeah, I write down. Mission Control writes down what went wrong, writes them on index cards, takes them back, and then those come up in the meeting as, all right, now we're going to talk about this. That's the version that works, because that tells the players, okay, this is what we're doing. I am grounded in a premise. I have information to pull off of. I don't have to create anything, but what I get to do is mess with something that the GM has put in front of me. That's fun. Yes. It's funny. I get to be kind of silly with it. Comedy.
Yes. I like both that and what we did on episode 100, which was a lot more work for the players, but we luckily had like a improv.
Yeah, we had trained improvisers, which made it a lot easier.
Yeah, I purposely stacked that show so that it would be funny and hopefully bring a crowd out, which it did. So I do like both versions, especially since like I tend to lean towards the needing a little bit of guidance, and I can tweak something versus let me come up with something off the fly. At least at this point in both my quote unquote improv career and role playing life. So yeah, that is I think a very good change. Like you said, like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. So you are, so it took you basically a year and a half to get to the point of being what you would call finalized, Kickstarter ready to go out to the public.
Yes. It took me about a year and a half.
So what steps are you currently in? Like I guess technically when people are listening to this, it's out on Kickstarter, but current day, Jeff, what's the build up now? Like, are you doing is there any kind of prep besides the promotional tour, or are you still, is it kind of stress free right now?
There's a lot of stress right now, but so where we're at right now is that the game text is written-ish. There's a few things I'm writing some mission dossiers because I want to add about a half a dozen of those into the book. We have 2 of them written so far, so I have 4 more dossiers, but those are also fun to write because I get to just take a spy movie premise and just add a bunch of ridiculous, kind of silly details. Those are fun.
Yes.
I have to write a step-by-step actual play of the game to put in as an example of play.
Okay.
Otherwise, the game text is written. It is written. It is finalized. I have given it to people who have read over the entire book and given their feedback. So I am prepared to take what I have and just put it in one document, attach a table of context and an index, and call it a day.
All right. So, and on Kickstarter, let's talk about the actual Kickstarter now.
But to answer the rest of your question, right now is all promotional tour stuff. Like laying out the game text is happening currently deep in a promotional tour. And then managing and running the Kickstarter.
Yeah, and I know that is it any because you're going through Third Act Publishing.
Third Act Publishing,
correct?
Jim McClure, who is my blood rival and my bitterest enemy. So it only made sense that we would partner together on the Kickstarter.
Is it does it feel any easier? I mean, I guess you don't have anything to compare it to.
So much. So much. I would not have done this project without a publisher at my back. I do not know enough about Kickstarter to even and it was something that I kind of set out to do. Like I had said, all right, as soon as I knew that this game was going to be big enough that like I needed a Kickstarter for it, I said to myself, I'm getting a publisher. Like I'm not just
okay.
And I know people who have just gone out and said like, I'm going to make this, like people who are like, all right, I am making this game. Guess I'm going to learn how to run a Kickstarter and do it myself. I said, no way. Because part of it is because I wanted to watch someone who really, really knows Kickstarter, and Jim McClure knows Kickstarter, to be like, okay, that's why you're doing it this way. So that next time, if I do decide, hey, this is a project I don't really need like help on, or like I don't really need like a studio to or a publisher to run this, I could put this together and then rely on somebody just for Kickstarter fulfillment. I wanted to watch somebody who's really, really good at it to go, okay, now I know what I'm doing, so that if there's a next time, I can kind of wing it a little more.
Yeah, and I think that's smart. I mean, I have been like just kind of like the sidekick on Kickstarters before. Like Mike, who's my frequent live co-host for this show, he's run a whole bunch of Kickstarters for books and for his card game Quantum Quest, it is. I get stressed out about it, and all I'm doing is really directing his Kickstarter videos and helping him with that kind of stuff. So I can only imagine like actually running one, and I have several like in my Excel sheets, like, all right, here was a Kickstarter I was going to run 2 years ago to help do something that I wanted to do, and I'm just too like it feels like so much work to do it, and I think it's not just running the Kickstarter, but like all the other stuff that comes with it, like after you're done, and obviously with a game, there's the print, like the book that has to be printed. That's a question. Is it going to be both digital and print, or just digital?
There's going to be a PDF and soft. It's going to be a soft cover. It's PDF and soft cover stretch or reward levels on the Kickstarter. And thankfully, which was the other thing, was like, I don't know enough about publishing to even consider like making these things, and so the nice thing is now I have a publisher who has contacts in publishing that can like make this book look nice, and I'm like so excited about it. Like I'm really just pumped because I was also pumped because though he is my blood rival, Jim McClure is a tremendously talented, has a genius mind for games, and that he believes in mission accomplished is awe, and like it's the best feeling in the world. And I would not be working with Third Act if Jim McClure did not believe in mission accomplished. And so that's like that itself is a huge part of why like we're doing this, or why why like the Kickstarter is even happening, is because I'm like, well, if the guy from Third Act, if the guy that made Reflections thinks that this game like has like a grounding, then I think I'm in pretty good shape.
Yeah, it's I don't know Jim McClure like you know Jim. We're not even friends, let alone blood rivals. So,
we are not friends. I would like that noted on microphone that we are not friends.
But I obviously know him from, he's been on your show, from the One Shot Network. I've heard him, he's one of those guys that if you are even a fan of stuff in tabletop role-playing games, whether it be, you actually sitting down and playing yourself, or being like a listener of the actual plays, like, you know him, you at least know his name. And it's, so it is. I know, you told me this a while ago, but when you first told me you were working with Jim, I was so happy for you, because I think that's a get. That's a big get for someone, especially like your first game. It takes a lot of pressure off of
for
you.
sure, 100%.
So the Kickstarter,
yes.
What do you know? Like, is that finalized, even though it's not live
We've
yet?
got
Like,
some detail. We got a few details we're looking at. It's sounding like a card subject to change is what I always say with these things, but it's looking like 4,000 is the number to get. That should get us a soft cover with black and white art on the interior, with then a stretch goal with a few $1,000s for a stretch goal extra, which I think is going to be 6,000. That'll get us interior art in color. PDF of the book is going to be $12, $20 for a soft cover, $35 for 2 soft covers, which is great because you want a copy for your field agents and a copy for mission control, and then some additional backer levels that I kind of want to keep a little secret because I'm kind of really excited about them. And then we have some stretch goals that nothing's formalized yet. We don't have anything like locked in, but like stuff is really like the stretch goals I'm very excited about. If we can get the people that like I the names I threw out, if we can get them in the project, I'm gonna be beyond stoked.
Well, and so base game, you hit 4,000 is going to be the core rule book with the 6 dossiers.
Yeah. It's looking like I'm like however many dossiers I end up putting in the book is however many we're gonna have. So I'm aiming for like at least 5 to 6 is probably the number that I'm going to put in, because that's like a good solid variety, but it's not overwhelming.
Now, is that purely kind of just like a number you came up with, or is it also like a page count thing?
Just a number I came up with. It just feels like the right number for the game.
And eventually, and obviously stretch goals are going to include, you already mentioned maybe artwork, but it's going to include, I assume, authors that are going to provide more dossiers.
I will tease it. I will tease it and say that we have been in talks with some people about doing some dossiers that I think sound pretty incredible.
Very cool. Very cool. So potentially, this could be, have a lot of content in it for, $20.
Yeah.
You said for the soft cover. And I don't know how you feel. I always try to get when I back projects on Kickstarter, I've turned to the guy who only backs like tabletop role-playing games now, because it's, even though I don't play them often, I like to have and I need the physical stuff because I like to hold a book. I'm part of that old generation where I read most of my comics digitally just because that's how I get them to review them. But when there's a really good book out, I go to the comic book store and like Heroes in Crisis #1, I went out to the store and I bought the actual physical book for that, because it seems like a story that's going to be special, and I want to have the printed copy of that. And that's how I feel about like almost like if I'm backing something, if I'm going to put money into a Kickstarter, I want it to succeed, so I might as well back it a little bit more by paying for the soft cover versus just the digital copy. And I just rather hold a book.
I totally get that. So this is gonna be out on release day, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say this because it's gonna be out on release day, so I can just say this. The highest backer level, I'm not sure, I believe it's gonna be 250 for the highest backer level, is I will partner with any backer at that level. I think we're limiting it to like 3. I think we're limiting it to 3 people, but I will partner with them and make the dossier that they want to see in the game. And I'm like, that's like the cool. That's the thing I'm really excited about, because like I want to know the weird dossiers that people want to see in this game.
Yes. That's, I think, as fun as it is, I imagine, creating a game, or anything. Like, I obviously know what it's like to be a creator, so I know it's fun to create something. But when I seen Mike do it when he creates his Kickstarter, and I kind of see it just like when I see the fun rewards and backer tiers that a lot of these, especially role-playing games, have. that's got to be like just another level of fun
Mhm.
for doing this project, let alone, whether it's your actual content or not, like this extra stuff that you do with the backers or with the stretch goals, and you work with other creators. I'm super excited to see everything that is out today or yesterday.
It's gonna. I'm so pumped. I'm so beyond excited.
And I have to tell you, because I went on a bit of a tear with Kickstarter this year. I backed several things, and I got to a point where it's like, I have no money to spend on every month, because every month I'm backing something on Kickstarter. So I told myself, I was like, all right, I got to save my money for 2 more Kickstarters this year. I know one of them's going to be Jeff's, because I knew at that point I knew you were running a Kickstarter. I don't know if it was just because you told me or if you mentioned something online about it, but I was like, all right, so that is done. Like, I know that's October's done, because that's what and so I am super excited to finally back it, because I've been this money's been burning a hole in my pocket waiting to be spent.
I can't wait to take your money. I really can't.
All right. And I would love to try to set up another actual play event with you and Mission Accomplished, because that is such a fun live experience. I think
it plays so well live. It's such a stage game is the thing. Here's the thing. It's out of my wheelhouse because it's not a 2-player game. It's not tied to the thing that like people know me for. But at the same time, I would argue that it's also like incredibly in my wheelhouse, because it's a like it makes like a radio play. It makes like it makes like it is like an improv thing, and it is so performative as a game that I think it's also like, as somebody that does actual play, which is also a kind of improv theater, like it's also like so in my wheelhouse to just have this game it does play just so perfectly live. It's such a live show game.
People obviously people are going to have a lot of opportunities to I assume, if you already listened to episode 100 of Everything Is Awesome, or you plan on listening to it after this, you're going to get a version of the game that doesn't really exist anymore, because you've made changes since then. So I assume the newer actual plays that are going to be out there in the world with all these other shows on your promotional tour, that's more representative to what you're putting out there.
I'd say like 80% of the game that we played is the same.
Yes, it's just that beginning piece.
The beginning piece is a little different, but like a lot of the core game is the same, and you can hear how it's just a long form improv show that everyone is just laughing with.
Yes. I cannot wait. I can't wait to hear all the other actual plays of your game that come out.
I know we've got at the time this drops, Fandible will be out. We did Roll to Play. We're doing Roll to Play in like a week or so. We did the Redacted Files, Refugees of Esmeralda, and I know we're doing One Shot at some point, or at least I think we are. Talks are in place. Nothing's formalized yet.
That's exciting. That's gonna be fun. Oh, and slightly related, because you brought up One Shot. I was thinking about this earlier today as well. How I think it's like, by the time when this episode of Everything Is Awesome drops, when people are sitting here listening to you and us talk about Mission Accomplished, almost 3 years ago, maybe a little less than 3 years ago, you and I sat down and talked for the first time, and you introduced me to the One Shot Podcast Network, but very specifically the Campaign Podcast, that I fell in love with instantly. That helped me through one of the toughest times of my life when I was losing my uncle, because of the Star Wars connection that I had with him, and as people are listening to this, like that story is done. You know, it's for you and I, you know, we still have one more week of some Star Wars campaign podcasts. But I think it's so weird to me that like the campaign has literally, for me, started and ended with you now. At least the Star Wars.
I like
kind of
that.
campaign.
I like that a lot.
It's and I can't, like, you know, you play a role in me discovering that show that again, like it lit, and I'm so thankful I had the opportunity to sit down with James and tell him to, you know, over a microphone how much that show meant to me. But like, you'd certainly play a role in a time of my life when like everything sucked because either my uncle was in the process of dying or he had just recently passed. Like that depressing time in my life, I was able to like laugh through at least an hour a week or however often that, you know, I listen to it on a daily basis because I was catching up. You know, I started listening to it, you know, in 2016. And I was, you know, I think 50 episodes behind or something like that. So it's so, I was thinking about it today because knowing that we were doing this
wild.
today.
That's what a wild like coincidence that is. That makes me really happy.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring that up because again, like that was that has been an important show, and because of you, you know, is how I know about it. So a bunch of different shows people can listen to. I will hopefully have the links to them in time. I can scrounge them up, but I will have as many links as I have at the time of that I'm releasing this episode in the show notes to where you can go and listen to the actual plays that that Jeff has done of Mission Accomplished. You know what? I'm not going to I'm really proud that throughout this entire interview, I have not slipped in calling it Mission Impossible.
That's good. Because that's a legally distinct property that is copyrighted, and I am not interested in paying that.
Yeah. Was there any concern with that? I guess not, because it is legally distinct.
Legally distinct. It's satire. It's very obviously satire.
Oh, yes. And to me, it almost play. I guess it could play as Mission Impossible as far as like, but to me, every time that I think of Mission Accomplished, I'm more so thinking of James Bond.
It's very James Bond. It's Archer. Like it's real specifically like Archer inspired. Like, but yeah, it's riffing a lot on James Bond style stuff, like with villains and with like the sort of like both of the dossiers I've written so far are James Bond plots. It's so far I've written a moon laser, and I wrote a poker tournament, so Casino Royale. Like they're both. So far, I've done all James Bond stuff. I should probably, I am definitely going to include the mission. I almost just said Mission Accomplished. The Mission Impossible. One of our agents has turned rogue and is like trying to smuggle out a bunch of information, because that's that's Mission Impossible, and that's a very classic. It's also GoldenEye though, so it's also very James Bond.
Well, and GoldenEye is one of my favorite. It was my first James Bond.
I think it's a lot of people's first James Bond, because the generation of us that grew up with the N64, that was our introduction to the concept of James Bond.
And I want to say I actually saw the movie before I played the game.
I definitely played the game first. I know that. Yeah. I watched the movie because I had played the game.
I think I am maybe a year or two older. Like I'm a couple years older than you, so I'm 34. So I think the movie came out like I was just old enough to see it in theater, like, or maybe I just have bad parents. I don't know.
It could be two things.
All right, Jeff.
All right, my friend.
So let people know where they can find you, your stuff, and most importantly, Mission Accomplished.
You can go on Kickstarter and search for Mission Accomplished. It's going to be the easiest way to find it. You can find me on Twitter at Party of One Pod. You can find all the work that I do at jeffstormer.com. You can find Party of One at partyofonepodcast.com, all my fantasy children at allmyfantasychildren.com. And I think that's just about everything. But really, the most important thing is absolutely go to Kickstarter, go look up Mission Accomplished, the role-playing game of super spies and office meetings. Back it, help make it a reality, help back get us some pretty cool stretch goals, which I can't talk about at the time of this recording because they're not locked in yet. But trust me, they are going to be spectacular. You're not going to want to miss them.
I am super excited. All those links are going to be in the show notes, including as many of the actual plays that I can find at the time of posting this. It is very important for everyone listening to this to go and back the Kickstarter right now, today. The first day, the first week is super important.
First week's make or break.
Yes, so it is so important that you go and back Mission Accomplished right now. And I promise you that whether you get the digital version or the print and copy, it's going to be well worth the investment you put in for it. Listen to all these actual plays of us playing Mission Accomplished and hear the laughter and joy we have doing it. Jeff, thank you for being on the show yet again.
Thank you, my friend. This was a blast, as always.
Thank you to Jeff for coming on the show. I enjoy having Jeff on this show. Every time I get to sit down and chat with him, it's always a pleasure. He's been on, as we discussed, pretty much every version of a podcast that I do, even the new one about his podcast. The only thing we need to get him on is the panel at one of our Comic-Cons, and hopefully we'll make that happen in 2019. But I am so excited that his game is funded. I've played the game twice now, as you heard, at PAX Unplug about this time last year, and on episode 100 of Everything Is Awesome, which is again in the show notes. I can't wait to get my hands on the physical book. It's going to be awesome. That's all I can say, and it looks like we're closing in on that stretch goal for the extra dossier, which means we're closing in on the full color artwork in the middle. So if you are a fan of tabletop role-playing games, please check out the Kickstarter, pass it along, share it, retweet it, like it on Facebook, share it on Facebook, wherever you go on social media, share his Kickstarter, because if you're a fan of tabletop role-playing games, or maybe your friends are, they're going to love this game. It is a great, fun game. You can't not have fun with this game. Speaking of his other podcasts, like I said, check out the newest That's Entertainment Podcast Network show, After Party of One, an after show that airs monthly and recaps Jeff's show, The Party of One podcast. Check it out on thatentertains.com/network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you download your shows. The first episode is now available and features Jeff Stormer as our first guest, and we take a deep dive into the September episodes of Party of One. It was such a great conversation. And totally different than what you just heard now. And we get some insight into how Jeff goes and puts these Party of One episodes together, from being the GM, from being a player, from the no setup to the setup ones. What a fascinating conversation that was. What a fascinating conversation this was. And I am so happy for Jeff and his Kickstarter. Like I said, check that out. And all the links to Jeff's Kickstarter and information on where you can find him and his other podcasts will also be in the show notes. Go to thatentertains.com/network to check out all the other shows on our network, like After Party of One. We like to end Everything Is Awesome with a call to action. Super friends, there are a lot of terrible things happening right now. It can feel like you can't do anything to help, but you can. It takes people like us to make a difference. One of the easiest and most effective ways to action is to call your representatives about issues that are important to you. Super friends, super agents, whatever you guys are this week, I want to let you know that this week again and up until after the election, we're going to be pushing this hardcore. If you are in a state that hasn't had deadlines for voter registration, make sure you are registered to vote. If you're not registered to vote, and then on November 6th, go out and vote. When I call my reps, I use a site called 5calls.org. That's the number 5calls.org. There, you'll find issue summaries for issues that are important to you, contact information for your representatives, and a script to read while you're on the phone to make sure your message gets across. Calling is quick, easy, and is one of the most effective ways to have your voice heard. Thank you to all of our supporters on patreon.com/thatentertains. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to bring this episode to you. If you want to support us in a non-monetary way, word-of-mouth recommendations and 5-star rating reviews on iTunes are the best way to spread the good word of awesome. You can find us on Facebook.com and Twitter @RealAwesomePod or @AwesomePodcast on Instagram. And we're available on AwesomePodcast.com and thatentertains.com/network. Get news about Everything Is Awesome from our website, social media accounts, and also on my personal Twitter @ThatNerdyKev. If you're interested in ad rates, live appearances, help with your podcast, or have a question or comment, email us at awesome@crudeHumorstudios.com. Everything Is Awesome is a production of That's Entertainment Podcast Network in association with Crude Humor Studios. Crude Humor Studios is a Philadelphia-based production company specializing in audio, video, and live performances. You can find more info at crudehumorstudios.com. Thanks for listening, super friends. We've been awesome.
That's Entertainment Podcast Network. Entertainment and culture. Artist-owned, fan-supported.